One, two, 1, 2. Perfect. Hello, everyone, dear colleagues. Good morning from my side. I hope you are enjoying this session. It's one of the last one, and you have been hearing just before how ERTMS should be best implemented into our network. And now is the time to listen and to learn about the future. So my name is Giorgio Travaini. I am the Acting Executive Director of Europe's Trade. So I will introduce a bit the session, and then my colleagues, Ian Collon and Lea Paties, will moderate an interesting panel discussion. So I have a few slides, if those are working perfectly. So, well, first of all, let's speak about Europe's Rail. Doesn't work. But in any case, Europe's Rail, when it will turn, in the second slide, it's there because we have a mission. We would like to ensure that the rail system is interoperable, the rail system works as one in the European ecosystem, in the European network, and serve citizens and businesses. And, well, if you can switch the presentation to the second slide, it will be great. And this vision that we have is for what? Is to ensure that, like ERTMS, we are doing innovations and we are bringing all those elements that are needed for citizens and businesses in the European playground. But it's more than ERTMS. We are touching all the different systems and subsystems in order to achieve high capacity of the overall system, which is flexible, interoperable, multimodal, sustainable, reliable, competitive, and inclusiveness. And why we're doing that, you will ask. Well, it's because we need to push the rail sector towards a more greater value of the rail transport in the total mobility of every citizens and in the total transport of every businesses. This is needed also because I think you all know the rail transport is one of the most sustainable transport modes, and in bringing more rail to the mobility and more rail to the transport, we're simply creating added value for the future of our children, for the future of our planet. We are saving CO2, we're making the transport system more safe, and incidentally, because the majority of the industry is in Europe, we're also increasing and boosting the European economy. So this is our vision, but then how do we make it real? Christian, that I saw it before, is often saying, Giorgio is sitting on a pack of money. And in a way, he's right. You can see there, it's 1.2 billion euros. And these 1.2 billion euros are there to do what? So we need to focus those activities on ensuring that we advance our technological and operational solution to make our vision possible. To make our vision possible, we have an instrument, which is Europe's Rail, and we have a program where all together, so it's a program where you are involved, we are building up those solutions and those technology. And we have a so-called innovation pillar, and my message to you is please innovate. Please innovate because obviously there are standards that are existing today. We have TSI, we need to respect them, but the system of the future needs to change. So don't hesitate to challenge the status quo, don't hesitate to bring a different solution that today goes into contrast of the TSI, because we are working with the European agency to ensure that the future will actually be better. And if needed, TSI will evolve. If needed, standards will evolve. But in order to do that, again, we need you to be brave, and this is also the part of the union in this joint undertaking, because those 1.2 billion euros are divided with 600 million euros of taxpayer money, and taxpayer money is there to finance risky venue. Risky venue that are coming both from the fact that research innovation activities, maybe one company alone cannot do it, so we need to do it in collaboration, but is also to accelerate the market uptake of the solutions. And then we have the system pillar, because I told you before, we want to build an integrated system. We want to have, you know, rail being compatible more at global scale, to optimize the global, not to optimize the local. And for this, we need to have a system view. For this, we need, of course, to have operational and technical solution at subsystem level, but those needs to be interoperable and more, I would say. We need to look into how do we harmonize operational requirements, operational rules, how do we actually operate a system in Europe in the same manner in all countries. This is one part of the work that you have already heard in the previous day, but also we need to create a system where interfaces are standardized, and maybe more than interfaces if needed. We need also to have a system that is stable. So we need to standardize what is needed to be standardized, keeping it stable, but having it modular. Why? Because we need to embed in this system all the innovation that in this case will come from the innovation pillar and from the work that we are doing. We need to do it together. It will not be easy. It is not easy because otherwise we will not be there. It's complex. There are several actors, several different benefit gain from every innovation, and more than that, sometimes who get the benefit is not who is paying the cost. And for this, we're working with the legislator. So the European Commission is very much working together with us. It's actually adding the system pillar exactly for this reason, to make sure that those innovations and system evolution are absolutely possible and achievable. Once we do that, we need to implement it into the system, because it's nice to have a prototype, it's nice to have a concept on paper of standardizing with standards and TSI, but those needs to be applied in the system if we really want to make an impact. And for this reason, we have also a deployment group. Actually, I would like to thank Joseph because we are, he's hosting as the first Europe's Rail informal deployment group. And in the deployment group, we need to discuss with all the sector and with all the actors what are the migration paths, both operationally and technical, but also what are the financial instruments that will need to be put in place for the deployments to happen. One deployment, it's absolutely key today. We've been discussing already. It's the deployment of the communication system, but more needs to come. And a lot of deployments of solutions that we have successfully brought to the so-called ITRL, so very close to the market, bring value only if our system is Europe. So our system, if it's brought in the network. One example of that is the digital automatic coupler. The digital automatic coupler makes no sense to have it at national level. Our playground for freight is international and is Europe. So having said this, I will finish here with just this slide that shows our founding member. Just in case you don't know, most probably you are already part of Europe's Rail. And it's more than that. We have already 300 single entities, so companies and organizations that are also participating in our program, and more is to come, because today we have engaged about half of our budget, but the other half is still to be engaged, and innovation still needs to happen with all your support, and also please help us to make a better system for our future of the planet and of our children. Thanks a lot. I will then now pass the floor to Ian, that will introduce you some of the outputs that we have already achieved in the remit of the system approach.
Good morning, everyone. I'll keep my phone with me to look at the Slido for questions later on. So the structure of this first session on the future, we will have two panels. The first is the panel that I will moderate, focused on future operations, and then there will be a panel more focused on future change in terms of functionality, so advanced safe train positioning and the challenges and response in the cybersecurity element. So the objective of this panel here is to discuss the strategic need or the strategic imperative for a more harmonized approach to operations at the level of CCS, the challenges to achieve it, and the steps that we are taking, in particular, through the joint undertaking to get there. And why talk about this in a session about the future? Well, first of all, it definitely has not been achieved so far. So if we are talking about being successful in terms of a deeper harmonization for the CCS system as a whole, it is for the future. But also, as I hope will become clear from the discussion, it is an imperative because the introduction of changes of digitalization to the system, essentially, I will argue, and hopefully will come out of the discussion, is not possible without a more harmonized approach across Europe. So this is a prerequisite for the development of the system as a whole. So to explore these questions, we have a panel. The panel will be just that. We have no presentations, no slides. So hopefully it will just be a discussion on the content itself. And for that, I will then welcome the panel. So first of all, Gemma Salazar, who's the Vice President for Strategy, Marketing, and Technical Mainline Signaling in Thales. Christoph Klöser, who's the Head of Technical Strategy in Siemens Mobility. Aude Chaili, who's part of the Research Europe team in SNCF Group. Who's next? Bernd, who's the Head of Development and Standardization of the Network-Capable Interlocking Technology in DB Infrago. And Nicolas Furness, who's the CCS engineering expert in Network Rail. So essentially, we'll structure this session in three parts. The first on the need, the second on the challenges, and then the third on the next steps and the conclusion. We have around 40 minutes. We will see how we get on. The idea is to have some questions and answers and discussion within the panel, and then if there is time at the end, to open it to the floor. But first of all, so on the first topic, the strategic need and necessity for harmonization. First of all, I want to talk about the scope of what we're talking about here. The conference is on ERTMS, but I think we need to focus as a sector not just on ERTMS as currently defined, so ETCS, the radio, because if you look at the CCS system as a whole, the challenges, the value, in fact, the issues that have been highlighted through this conference are linked not only to the bits that are currently focused on in terms of the definition of ETCS, but the whole system, the interlockings, the RBC, and the broader CCS. And in terms of value, in terms of the investment requirements that are coming up, the majority of the costs are in the elements which are not currently standardized and harmonized. So when we're talking about the cost to the European system, we need to look at the whole CCS and see where there is a need for a common European approach. The other reason is, I mean, we've heard a lot over the last few days on the complexity of the current situation, the associated cost, the issues with ESCs, the complexity and length of deployment time. Again, the focus here is to address these points. These are symptoms of an issue. And the way to address that is, I think, to go deeper than simply a focus on the current definition of ETCS or GSMR, is to look at what needs to be done for the whole CCS system at the European level. So there is a need, I think, for a consideration of the European approach to the broader CCS harmonization, technical and operational. Now, when ERTMS was being developed 20, 25 years ago, I mean, the people who developed it, maybe quite a lot still in the room, were clever people, serious people. The target of ERTMS-only operations, a focus on the kind of implementation at level 2 and above, was seen as a target. But the straightforward fact is that we have not achieved this so far, and there is still a long way to go to get to there. But my assertion for this session, and what I'd like to explore with the panel in this first bit of the discussion, and also hopefully as a message back to you, is now, at this moment, I think there is a chance to address this point about a deeper harmonization, because there is a requirement. There is a requirement in terms of cost and resource which cannot be solved based on the current implementation process. It is simply not possible, and we'll explore this in a second, to develop the system, to introduce digital interlockings, to introduce improvements on the basis of specific member state by member state solutions from a cost perspective and from a resource perspective. So there's a structural need to have a more harmonized approach. And my assertion is this is what is different now. We have a chance to try and address it. It will require a significant investment, significant push from the railways and from the suppliers to be able to get there. But we have to get there. So my point to raise in this first part of the discussion is on that. Are we now in a position from the sector as a whole, from the supplier side and the railway side, to again come back to this question, a deeper harmonization for CCS? Is that a need? What are the consequences of not achieving it? So my first question then is to Gemma. So do you agree? Do you agree with my assertion? And what do you see from a supplier perspective of not achieving such a harmonized approach? Do you hear?
Now? Yes, it's better. Thanks for the question, Ian. Ian has been pushing me to give you a clear answer, yes or no, why the suppliers now are favorable for a harmonization. When it's undeniable that along the years we have been gaining an incumbency position in some markets. So no one wants to lower the barrier entries for other suppliers to come. This is the business as it is. The problem we have right now is the complexity, as you were mentioning, is increasing. Because it's not only that we have to keep, I would say, legacy or existing operational rules, concepts, which not always written everywhere. And you can quote me on that afterwards. And on top of that, we need to provide as suppliers high, reliable, available solutions, geo-redundancy, virtualized, coin as server, future in the cloud, ULINKs, baseline 2, 3, 4, TSI 2023. And the current situation is, even if we thought that with ETCS level 2 without signals, we would have more harmonization, already Thales is delivering, I think, the third market with no signals, and still we have a high percentage of very specific features. So what will happen in the future? This is not stopping, because as we are asking in this forum very often, okay, stability, but let's not forget innovation. We really need to bring the next generation higher capacity, lower cost of ownership, all the non-functional as well towards on top of the functional, and there will be a multiplication. It will not be a simplification, there will be a multiplication. So yes, I think at the end the suppliers are giving in and asking and willing really to collaborate to have a more harmonization on the operational rules. And then I think we can explore more how and when and how this could happen, because there will be many buts for my company. I heard them already. But nevertheless, is the complexity, is the cost, because then we will have to maintain, regardless if there is many lines to deploy or not, if there is a clear funding scheme in the market, we will need to update not only once but 20, all of these new features, non-functional that I was mentioning before. And the third, you also mentioned it, is the capacity, the resources. We will not be able, we already have, and I guess all the suppliers have the same issue, is there is a retirement process. So the people get older. The people who knows these all operational rules, they will be leaving the company. So simplification, harmonization, I would say first simplification looks like a must for us as well now to justify also our survival as supplier in the market.
Thanks, Gemma. So I think indeed from the supplier side, more or less confirmed, I think that the complexity of not having a harmonized approach, at the very least, will lead to non-cost-effective, expensive solutions. But my question now is to Nicola. If the supplier's perspective is changing, seeing the need to harmonize, potentially seeing the need to move away from member state-specific solutions, are the railways ready to do it too?
Well, I think change is always a challenge, and I think it is often said that railways are stuck in the past, wedded to our historical national systems, and it is a real culture change to move away from that. But I don't think we've got a choice anymore. The current system is unsustainable and unaffordable. We'll be looking at closing lines if we haven't got the money to keep renewing the network, our networks in the way we need. So I think definitely at a strategic level, I really do think the railways are open to change. It's almost we've got this burning platform, an imperative to need to move forward and work together to implement a harmonised system. After all, we're all implementing ETCS, and if we can have enough confidence to remove our Class B systems, I don't see any rationale left for keeping our national way of operating. And so if we can harmonise the way we operate, which allows standardised design, we're then heading towards a much more affordable railway, and that can only be a good thing for our customers.
Thanks, Nicola. Any other comments from the panel on this topic of the need before we move to the challenges?
Well, we have seen the presentations before that there is a clear message that without simplification of the system, we will not gain speed. We will neither have the opportunity to reduce costs to a minimum, and therefore we are failing to deliver what we expect to do with the new system. So I think to your question, there's a clear yes, we need this new harmonization, and where in the forefront we concentrated on the technical harmonization, it's now up to raise the question is if also operational harmonization is necessary. And I think we have a really good opportunity because we have this window that many infrastructure managers have to invest a lot of money to renew their lines. We go for digitalization. We go for ETCS only operations, and exactly this provides a window of opportunity to think about, can we also get rid of operations that we need in the past, but with the new technology is not necessary anymore to reduce complexity. And this is the chance, this is the challenge, and this is not a thing that an infrastructure manager alone can do, but I think this is an issue that we need to discuss on European level. Yeah? And we have to be fast, and we have to do that step. Ian, when we prepared for this session, I was thinking about, I had this question 25 years ago. When I entered the railway business, everybody told me, well, it will be a big point if we could harmonize operations. Yeah? Now, 25 years later, we sit here on stage, say, this is the point. We have to do it. We have to do that step because it makes this thing, the system in total, easier, affordable, and more performance.
Thanks very much. I think then, hopefully a clear message, and I think if there's one point that I'd like you to take away from this panel, I think it is that there is an opportunity and there is a necessity for the sector as a whole, suppliers and railways, to work together to change the approach that has been done in the past, to have a more fundamental European harmonized approach to the way that ETCS level 2 operations are considered. And it really is a necessity from a cost and capacity point of view. However, this is very, very far from straightforward. There are many issues to consider: cultural, institutional, and technical. So I'd like to ask Aude, from your perspective, how do you see the challenges to achieve this harmonization goal?
The challenges, but also why didn't we achieve it yet since we made ERTMS? Well, it's also the fruit, as you said, of decades, almost centuries of national developments and national operations. And if we found a common way, we will have to train hundreds, or even at a European level, thousands of operators to react correctly, to have an accurate response in case of a degraded mode. So that won't be from one day to another. But also then with the SERA, with the common CCS in the future, how can we not achieve this harmonization? You have also external constraints. I mean, for the level crossings, a famous example, the road traffic law is different from one country to another. The responsibility in case of an accident is different, so that leads to different level of safety. And also the behavior of the drivers is different. An example would be when a level crossing is closed for too long time in France, the car drivers will try to pass. So that's a lesson learned that is taken into account in our operational rules, but maybe not at a European level. Speaking about safety, we have two choices. Either we align on the upper level of safety for all operation rules, but that could lead to unsustainable costs, or some countries will have to accept to degrade their level of safety, which is a tough decision to make. But still, we think at SNCF that it's very useful to have this harmonization. We are deeply involved in the system pillar operational design domain, which is the forum to achieve this harmonization. And we also work with DB in workshops to share our experiences and see where we can harmonize. So that's the way forward for us too.
Thanks very much, Aude. And Christoph, from the supplier perspective, how do you see it in terms of the challenges for implementation?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ian. One of the challenges, or the current challenges, I think Gemma already elaborated on that. The point is, and I would say the harmonization for the suppliers is more a chance than a challenge. I would say it that way. But what is really needed and what we are looking for is that with harmonization, the innovation potential will not be reduced. And therefore, we are very much looking forward to the harmonized operational scenarios where we then also have a harmonized system architecture underneath. But it's also important that we are not over-specifying. That does not really become a challenge in terms of obeying too many specifications. So it's important that we really standardize the system on the interfaces, that we have then also stable specifications, which leaves enough room for innovation, for new functionalities, for additional benefits, what improves then the system further. And as a next step, I think the industry in Europe is also good in integrating system. And if we find then, especially when we have this harmonized components, this harmonized architecture, if we have then maybe a larger scope and larger systems to be established and to be built, and maybe with the higher economies of scale, we maybe can also attack larger areas to upgrade these, to be more efficient, to be more faster, then also in the rollout and in the implementation of ETCS in a harmonized way.
Thanks very much, Christoph. In terms of the challenges, I think they're very significant. But again, I think the message and in the end the rationale for forming the system pillar as was described in the joint undertaking is to provide a platform for the railways, the operators, and the suppliers to be able to work through these issues and come up with solutions. And the goal, one of the main goals of the work of the system pillar, is to provide solutions in terms of technical solutions for the implementation of the evolution of the interlocking, the evolution of the onboard CCS, but also this important work in terms of the associated operational harmonization. So just to advertise a bit, I mean, the platform is there. There is a governance process, there is a budget, and there is actually now a working mechanism for this critical discussion between the actors within the railway to achieve this imperative. So my next question is back to Bernd. How do you see in practice us working through the next steps and achieving this, what is in the end a massive challenge?
Well, it will definitely not be easy. That's for sure. Nonetheless, let's have a look where we are now. And on the one hand side, I think we have excellent engineering tools, engine mechanisms, not just to describe on formal basis technical systems, but also do that for operations. We have the platform you mentioned already, the system pillar, where we can align the work, we can coordinate the work, we can bring things forward. From this conference, I think we can take the message home that we have a chance to do that, and that operational harmonization will have a large impact on our business. Yeah, it will reduce the complexity, as we said before. So we are convinced that this is the right way. And coming back to your question, now how can we do that? And within DB, we started that journey already, meaning we have an internal project dealing with the question on how operational rulebook could look like if we go for ETCS only operations and get rid of the Class B system and line side signaling, yeah, to reduce the complexity. And we are at that point where we can show that there is an opportunity to reduce the complexity and have a sound set of operational rules that we can implement to go for ETCS only operations. And we are happy also to share that with others in order to enlarge the discussion because, as I said before, operational harmonization is no national issue. We have to find a way forward, but we need to have a sound and a mature proposal on the table in order to discuss. Don't get me wrong, this is not the message that this will be easy. It is not easy. Migration will be really, as Nicolas, you said, it will be a tough thing to do. Nonetheless, as I said, we are talking about that about the last 25 years. Yeah? And at the edge of digitalization, at the edge of national rollout programs, there will be massive investments in projects going for ETCS only equipment. If we fail to do that step also for operational harmonization, we miss that windows of opportunity. Yeah? And when I say it's not a national issue, then it's obviously a European issue. It is an issue of the sector. And the sector is here in that room. We represent, and the message is, I think everybody has to ask the question how he can support that, yeah? If he can be a part of the solution in that way. I'm confident that there is an opportunity, that we can bring forces together, that we have a critical mass of people supporting, a critical mass of projects heading for that. And probably we do not need to wait another 25 years in order to bring that to the agenda.
Thanks, Bernd. Any other comments from Ud? Go ahead.
Yes, I would add that harmonization of operations seems to be a problem for operators, but we also need the suppliers, and they are in the system pillar also, because it will be a huge and long work, and so they need to prioritize the cost drivers of this harmonization of rules. So it's good that they are involved also in this work, and that they can lead us, or not lead maybe, but yeah, show us the way and the best way to go there.
Thanks. Christoph, go ahead.
Yeah, and maybe let me reflect a little bit what also Bernd said before. I feel currently, and this is maybe also something what have changed in the last years, that now the sector is more standing as a whole. I think when I listen a little bit the messages from the supplier and from the railways, it all goes in the same direction. And this is something what gives me a lot of confidence that we are this time in the right direction. And if we're looking where the competition is not in the railway, the competition is outside. It's the trucks, it's the other means of transport. And therefore we really have to take the momentum we currently see also for modernize, to digitalize the railway system. And this is something we can only do together. And if we can keep the spirit, what goes also here from this conference and also from the work we have day by day in Europe's rail, but also in the other gremia, it's really important to keep this and to find, this has been, as I said before, pragmatic solutions, what also not take 25 years to be implemented, that we find the right steps. And that's really, really important because we have to catch up with what's going on currently outside because the road is not sleeping. And we have to make sure that rail traffic becomes even more attractive as it is today, because it's one of the important means to reduce the CO2 emission.
Thanks, Christoph. Nicola, I think.
And I think it's that momentum that's important. We've got to keep moving forward, and we've got to move fast, because we need these solutions, and we don't need, as Bernd said, to wait another 25 years for them to come on the table. It took us a long time to develop ETCS and get ETCS into implementation. We can't afford to wait another 25 years for the outputs of the system pillar to come and make a real difference to the railways. So I think it's that message of speed and having solutions that are migratable, and we can start using and implementing in our networks now, or in the next couple of years at least, because we need to change. We know that change is going to be difficult and take a long time to embed, so we need to start early and start helping people move along this new journey.
I think that's, a good point. If nothing's coming out for 25 years, then the system pillar won't be around. But the point is the work within the joint undertaking on the system pillar in this topic is in the end entirely dependent upon sector input from the railway side, from the supplier side. So I think also back to the conference as a whole here, again, like I was saying at the beginning, many of the symptoms that we find ourselves in at the moment in terms of ERTMS deployment, in terms of the cost, complexity, and deployment slowness, are as a result of the choices made in implementation to keep a wide variety of flexibility in terms of implementation, to keep the flexibility in operational approaches, to keep the interaction with Class B. Again, the assertion here is, with digitalization, with the progressive move to ETCS-only operations, there is an imperative, there is a need, there is a necessity to have this harmonized approach. But to achieve it, a massive challenge, and it needs the input from the sector to achieve it. So the speed, the quality of the outputs that we're able to achieve within the platform that is existing there requires really the committed input from the sector. So to the extent that organizations are not involved, or not involved to the extent that they perhaps should be, this is an invitation to get more involved, because we're really at a critical juncture here. Are there any other comments, or should we? Yeah, go ahead, Gemma.
Yeah, thank you. We are, I think, all very aligned, and we have tried in the past, maybe the older people remember, the Euro interlocking, INES, all of these attempts to harmonize, and we failed. I think we went too big and too large from the very beginning, and now, as you were saying, I think we need to focus. There are some critical scenarios or use cases that we can focus first, and then we can keep harmonizing later. Also, we have discussed yesterday and today the deployment, also a bit of rationalization in deployment to avoid, for example, overlay. Overlay will never bring simplification because you keep the old, the new. Also, we bring, again, the newest technologies and newest interfaces, and still we keep signals with 20 aspects. But U-links, sorry. So I said, I think the sector, we should focus this time if we want to succeed, and maybe some baby steps until we have a full harmonization, but whenever something is ready, and I think my last part of the recipe is consensus, because if only a few infrastructure managers or railway undertakings or suppliers are on the table, very soon, like has happened in the past with other harmonizations, will step back and they will keep their own implementations. And this we have seen. So I think we have learned so much in the last years trying to do the same that I think we could apply some good recipes for succeeding this time.
Thanks very much. Any other comments from the panel, or we open up for a few minutes of questions? I think we open up for questions. Any questions from the hall on this topic? I can't actually see. There's a hand over there. And a hand over there. I think people are coming around with microphones.
Does it work? Can you? Yeah, it seems to work. Yeah, Ralf Müller, DB Infrago. We have seen and heard many presentations also in the last days requesting the strict operational harmonization. And we can certainly understand that this is priority number one. And we have seen also yesterday in this FRMCS section the need for test lines cross-border. And I asked myself whether this would not be a brilliant opportunity to bring operational harmonization to the people, to the colleagues, to the railways, in finding suitable cross-border lines where harmonized operational rules are executed from now on, from day one on, where people believe, where colleagues believe. Still considering that a lot of colleagues think, when they think about Europe's rail and in the past about Shift Rail, about huge bulks of PowerPoint presentations. And as said, seeing is believing. That means if you want to seriously implement harmonized operational rules, why not straight going to the cross-border lines and implementing right now?
Thanks, Ralph. I think this is a matter relatively close to bounce hats. I don't know if you can respond to this.
Well,
DB Infrago to DB Infrago.
He puts the ball in my court, yeah, so I do return. Yeah. Of course, seeing is believing. Yeah. So if we find lighthouse projects, it will be best to demonstrate that it works. However, I think there's first of all the work to do in order to come up with a harmonized operational rulebook. And this is not an easy task. As I said, we have started that journey at DB, and we are happy to share all this know-how. We bring it into the system pillar in order to have an open discussion. And then coming back what Ralf is proposing, and then of course we have to find a first project, in best case a project with cross-border traffic, yeah, and to demonstrate that we in Europe are capable to do that. Yeah. One more thing that if I could place a wish on the table, yeah, I think we talked about game changers, and when we talk about game changers, we had always this technical part in mind, yeah, technical issues or FRMCS or whatever, but also operational harmonization is a game changer. And by the way, I believe that we have also to address that we have a European safety case for that. Yeah, because I myself have experiences in going for homologation and approval of new systems, signaling systems, and 3/4 of the work is just writing papers, rather than concentrate on what we as engineers like to do to build technologies. Yeah, so So I think to reduce the hurdles of doing that step is also to address that on European level, to come up with a safety case, with rules on how to approve these new technologies. And I think it would make my life at least, and I think all the life of many other people here in that room, much more easy.
Thanks, Bernd. Next question. We have, I think, maybe time for one more, depending on the...
Jan, Gabriel Duplessis, CEO and SNCF. Giorgio Tavani introduced your presentation stating he asks for innovations. I totally agree with this. Innovation is interesting, but I wonder whether when I have read the STIP, standardization TSI input plan, if there are not too many ideas, 150 I remember, we feel they are interesting, but we wonder whether if they are really cost effective. There is not very detailed on this key issue of the cost effectiveness of each of the STIP line. And secondly, is Europe-Israel committed to deliver, let's say, tested and validated innovations before they become mandatory through TSI, I guess?
Okay, thanks. I'll have to be brief because the clock is counting down. I mean, for me, the question is slightly outside the scope of the session, but okay, I will try and answer it. So the standardization TSI input plan, for those that are not aware, is the program of the outputs from the Europe's Rail program, which are potentially going to enter into TSIs or standards or other harmonization channels in the future. So my quick response is, first of all, that the program of work within the joint undertaking is something that is described and agreed based on, first of all, the legal requirements of the setup of the joint undertaking, what it should be working on, and the agreed program of all the members. So what is described in the plan is a description of the program as has been agreed by the members. Then the question of what is the appropriate harmonization channel, the state of development, the relative prioritization is, I think, something that comes afterwards and potentially is beyond the scope of the joint undertaking because in the end, quite a lot of the projects are R&I work. In terms of full cost-benefit analyses, I think for absolutely everything, I mean, it isn't the case. As I say, the plan is based on the program of work of the JU, but for example, for DAC, there is economic cost-benefit analysis for FMCS, which is largely done through the UIC-led program, but as was discussed yesterday, we have the call for the testing and validation. We support the translation into the TSI. As far as I understand it, there isn't a cost-benefit analysis, and I don't think you're calling for one. So I think it needs to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis, depending on the particular status of the improvement that is there. But one final point, to try and bring it back to the issue here. I mean, I saw in the presentation at the beginning of the day the questions on stability of specifications, on overall cost. But I was a bit surprised, to be honest, to not see in the presentation that, to me, the issue in terms of the system to an extent is the adaptability, the flexibility of the system. If the system was updatable to change in a reasonable, kind of modular, flexible way, these questions on stability of specifications wouldn't be there. So part of the work that we do in terms of the CCS developments on the from the perspective of the system pillar is to try and address this too, to look at the system design, so that when new functions are introduced, they can be introduced in a more efficient and painless way. And I hope that's also a priority for the sector, because that is really an important element of improving the system in the future and in the end, reducing costs. But I'm now way out of time, so sorry, Leah. Thanks again to the panel. Again, the message from this panel is, and I hope you see it here, that there really is now a momentum and a concerted effort from the sector as a whole to address this huge challenge of a more harmonized approach to the operations of the whole CCS system and the necessity of that. So we have the mechanism through the work of the system pillar and beyond to bring the sector together to deliver that. And we really look forward to trying to deliver on that huge challenge. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We are switching panel. We're trying to do it as quick as possible so that we can make best use of the time that we have left in this session, and we have an interesting discussion planned for you today. I'll just get this set up. We have just addressed our future operations. Ian and Giorgio have mentioned it in the introduction. We're gonna have gonna take a bit of time to look into some possible new functions and some technology aspects. So the discussion might be a little bit more technical than what we just had, but stay with us and we're gonna make it interesting. EU Rail, it was mentioned, we have the system pillar, we have innovation pillar. In those 3 days conference, I think some aspects of the development ongoing in Europe's rail were addressed, and especially during this famous STEEP session, during the first day, during the workshop. We cannot present everything today, obviously, we need to make choices. We will come back in the future to present initial results that we are getting, but we wanted to take the opportunity today to look into 2 main aspects: cybersecurity and train positioning. So I will directly introduce the speakers that we have today. The session will be organized with a first discussion on the cybersecurity with 2 speakers, and second discussion with on train positioning with the other 2. So I'm happy to introduce, in the order of sitting, the famous Thomas Châtelet. Yes, very famous project officer at the agency in the ERTMS unit, telecom expert, but he's also handling all the cybersecurity aspects for the agency. So thank you for your presence, Thomas. Marcus Vichy from Siemens, that's your official house, but today you are on stage in your capacity as domain leader for the industry on the cybersecurity work ongoing in the system pillar. I will introduce our next contenders, and then we will come back on to you. We have Adrien Garros from SNCF, localization system expert. His house is SNCF, but he's here today representing the EU Rail innovation pillar. And we'll have the occasion to discuss a little bit more with him later on. And the famous also, Daniel Lepour from EU SPA, Senior Development Manager. And we will come back on to the 2 of you. Have a bit of patience, and we will start with cybersecurity. Yes. I'm just gonna take the clicker. Hopefully it works fine. Yes. Good morning, Thomas. Good morning, Marcus. So, I will start with you, Marcus. You are the lead and the system pillar work on cybersecurity. We already had quite a lot of work on cybersecurity done in the previous program in Shift to Rail, and I think you were also involved in this. The work was taken over by the system pillar at the beginning of the program a couple of years ago. It might not be fully known for the rest of the community what is happening in there. Can you give us a little bit of an insight as to what the cybersecurity team is doing, what is the plan, what are the main outcomes already, and what are the next steps?
Yes, so first I want to make a big thank you actually of the opportunity to have a project like Shift to Rail, that we had 6 years of work together to get to know from the industry and from the operator side that the key stakeholders in cybersecurity. So a big thank you to the Commission that we had this time to really get together through a storming phase. And now, since we are moving this to the system pillar, we have a very effective team that works on creating harmonized standards. So what we see here, cybersecurity is a quite complex topic. I would say it's the same complexity as we have with safety, and with the current legislation that we see in Europe, which has been published and becomes into force in just the NIS, for example, this October, and the Cyber Resilience Act in 3 years, there's quite a strong complexity here that we need to get into a pragmatic approach, and that's what we have done, prepared in Shift to Rail, but now continuing System Pillar to create a set of specification, which is a kind of, I always say, a make you happy package, a one-stop shop that fulfills all these different legislation that we have now seen in Europe being published and getting into force in a few years, but also on the international standards that we have seen and are applicable, like the ISO 27K and the 62443, but also the more rail-specific standards that we see in Europe, the EN 5701. So what we will provide, and this is actually the plan for the system pillar, is to create these 4 set of specification that address all the needs, that we have full traceability and compliance to all these legislation on cybersecurity and all the norms that we have in cybersecurity. So, as I said, this will be a one-stop shop when you take these specification, a harmonized European standard on cybersecurity for rail. First of all, for the CCS, to comply with everything that exists there.
Okay, thank you very much.
And for the plan, we have the next slide. So where are we actually? So we have been working now for nearly 1.5 years on the system pillar, and we've created now the second draft, which is currently out for review. It is still there for until May 17th. This is but not the last review. We have another review coming up where we have done the final draft end of August and have another review period until we then hopefully done in what's our current plan to have the final specs published as a system pillar document, which is then a potential input also for the TSI for CCS in January 2025.
Very clear. Thanks a lot, Marcus. And you're providing the best transition I could have hoped for. Thomas is getting ready. So there's work on cybersecurity in Europe's rail for obvious reasons, and we'll come back to that afterwards. ERA has a natural role into this. I mean, we are digitalizing more and more. Of course, ERA is the ERTMS system authority. I'm quite interested to have a bit of a point of view of the agency on the cybersecurity, let's say, work and the cybersecurity approach in order to future-proofing as much as possible all the elements and new functions that are coming into the system.
Indeed. You could wonder why ERA is there in this EU-rail pillar discussion. And as a matter of fact, I think that cybersecurity will be the guinea pig for the collaboration between the system pillar and the agency, because we know this is going to happen, that the system pillar is supposed to prepare, thanks to the standardization and TSI input plan, some change requests that might affect this or that TSI. And cybersecurity is the first one in the pipe. And we have received already draft specifications from the group that is led by Marcus on a very concrete proposal on 4 specifications that are related to cybersecurity. And the missing gap now is the collaboration between EU-Rail and ERA to use practically those 4 specifications in the first step the CCS TSI, then the TAP-TAF TSI, then other TSIs. The question that you are indirectly asking, Leah, is what should be the reflect in the regulation of cybersecurity? And thanks also to the contribution from EU Rail with a concrete proposal. This was alluded to yesterday. The cybersecurity regulation is mostly a transversal regulation. So there is, in a sense, very little room for introducing cybersecurity requirements in the TSI, contrarily to what one could think, because we have already a very strong EU regulation, as in the NIS2, the CRA, and this is de facto already applying to all the sectors as a transversal manner, including the railway sector. So what we need to have in the TSI, and possibly also in the common safety method, is a very targeted approach to complement what would be missing from this transversal regulatory framework that de facto is already applying to the railway sector. So what we do at the agency to try to take reflection of that in the TSI and possibly in the TSM, the common safety method, sorry. Well, this is first of all to be aware, and we need to acknowledge that there is quite a lot ongoing from EU Rail notably, but also from IEC, from Senelec, that they are producing standards on cybersecurity for the railway. So we need to be aware of that. This is already an activity on its own. And we need to also work on the cooperation building, meaning cooperation building with the sector, so here directly with EU Rail, but also possibly with the industry, with UNIFE, to make sure that we capture in an appropriate manner what is the wishes from the sector, but obviously also from the railway actors to try to find the adequate balance. And to do that, we are very lucky, if you can switch to the next slide, that we have an excellent collaboration with ENISA, which is our sister EU agency responsible for cybersecurity. And we have a very, very good and strong collaboration with ENISA. And what we plan to have with them is a very comprehensive mapping. This is somehow overlapping what you are doing, Marcus, in this comprehensive snapshot of which regulation is applying concretely to the railway sector. And together with ENISA, what we are going to do is to provide a mapping of these transversal requirements on cybersecurity onto the railway sector, and to derive from that what are the missing gaps that we need to fill in the TSI and the CSMs.
Okay, very clear. I have a follow-up question for you also. As obviously, your role as system authority for ERTMS, the agency. How do you potentially assess or see or foresee potential impact that cybersecurity requirements may have on the future architecture, the architecture that is currently being discussed and being built?
This is an extremely complicated question, and I think there were some points as well on that on the previous panel. And the key difficulty is the legacy assets, and how do you make sure that having in mind a future target architecture, putting in place cybersecurity requirements and design by security, how to make sure that this could also be applied, hint, very complicated, to the legacy asset, but also the coexistence of this new architecture with the very sound principles for cybersecurity to coexist with those legacy aspects. And here, there might be indeed difficulties for this clash between new design principles for the target architecture and what we have already today. And this is the role of ERA, unfortunately, to be there and to say potentially that some new ideas for the future architecture would have to be adapted because we need to take into account what we have already there.
And we need nice discussion in the future.
And we need to take into account what has already been developed. If we take the example of the ERTMS, for instance, we are not starting from scratch right now on the future telecommunication system. If we come right now with brand new ideas on how cybersecurity should be implemented there, we will face some difficulties because we have already agreements with the sector on how the architecture should look like. So indeed, a very tricky point.
Thanks a lot. Marcus, coming back to you, I have sort of anticipated it earlier, because we are obviously in the ERTMS conference, so there is a focus on CCS, but cybersecurity does not only concern CCS, even though this is an obviously important topic. What about the applicability of the cybersecurity work in the SP and the system pillar to other subsystems? I mean, the traffic management system, the TMS, asset management. I mean, there's more and more digitalization, sharing of data, transmission of data coming from different subsystems. What's a bit the view of the system pillar and the cybersecurity team on applicability of the work currently done?
Yeah, Leah, thanks for the question. I think I have good news for you. When you go to the next slide, there you will see this actually. The good thing is that cybersecurity is not specific to a certain domain. And that's how we also draft the specification. We make it quite generic. We say we have components that talk to other components. We call them secure components because they have some properties for features that they need to have. But we define the interface between the communication, and that's independent of the application. The other key element that we are providing is an interface specification to what we call the shared security services. And this is one of the key parts of harmonization and keep the cost to a minimum in Europe. We don't want to have a French security, an Austrian security, and a Deutsche Bahn security. And with this European standardization of the interface to an infrastructure that provides security services, we make the minimum cost possible. So we don't have the countries specific, and we're at the right time now to establish this. For the applicability to other parts, currently the system pillar is really focused on the CCS. But as I said, from the cybersecurity, we don't see much actually challenges to adapt this also to other domains, other TSIs. And we've just been requested by ERA to conduct a gap analysis for these other TSIs, and we will analyze how we can actually do this in the scope of the system pillar. This will be an ongoing effort.
Okay, very clear. Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I want to give the possibility for questions from the floor and also from Slido, but we are also pressed by time, and I would like to make sure that we have enough time to speak with Daniel and Adrien over there. Thank you very much, Thomas and Marcus. Might have some questions on cybersecurity afterwards, but thanks a lot, and I invite you to stay with us and share the rest of the discussion. Daniel, Adrien, coming on to another interesting topic. I will start with you, Daniel. Hello. I will, yeah. We last met in Madrid last year, where we co-organized with ERA and EU-SPY and EU-Rail this conference on space for rail. We were participating in a panel, and I asked you back then whether you believe that satellites were on track. And you happily answered that, yes, of course, Leah, satellites are on track. We are 6-7 months later. A lot of things have been happening a bit in the background. Can you give us a bit of a EU-SPA view on how things are evolving, what has happened, what are you guys also quite busy dealing with and managing over in Prague?
Sure, thanks a lot, Leah, and thanks also for the reminder about what I said at the Space for Innovation in Rail conference. It was, by the way, a very successful and nice event. Thanks for all of you who joined from the community. I see a couple of people over here that were there with us. But let me put it a little bit in the context. EUSPA, as the European Union agency for the space program, is actually seated and based in Prague, in Czech Republic. In case that you did not recognize from my accent, I happen to be also from there, from Czech Republic. And 20 years ago, already at that time, when there was Günther Verheugen as the commissioner for the broadening of the EU, to whom we are still thankful for being accepted in the European Union, already at that time he stated that Czechs are really world-class in one particular element, and that is skepticism. Well, on the contrary, and to make an exception, I have to be optimistic again, Leah. Again, like I was in Madrid, and there are many reasons for that. Of course, the first reason is you as the railway community, ERA, Europe's rail joint undertaking, and all the users out there that are supporting the continuous development and adoption of GNSS in train signaling, but also a large part of applications of EU space program that are already up and running in rail. Now, let me give you another perspective on EUSPA. Of course, I would be able to read our website and the mission statement, but for you as the ERTMS community, I would like to pass a message that you should take a look at us as a future potential service provider of mission-critical services for ERTMS for what concerns localization and eventually in the future also telecommunication. This is our target and our focus, and for what concerns the applications themselves that we are actually able to see already now deployed in rail, and the services that we provide, let me summarize very briefly. So we have Galileo out there that was referenced here many times, and this is the global satellite navigation system comparable to and better than maybe United States GPS or Navstar. And all of you have got this system already in your pockets on your FRMCS-enabled smartphones. So this is in operation and available to be used. It's used in railways, for example, in the passenger information systems or for the wagon telematics and other elements, non-safety critical at the moment. Then we have EGNOS, which is the shortcut for European Geostationary Navigation Overlay Service. It's a bit complex, but I will explain you in a very simple terms. It's a watchdog. It's a watchdog of the GNSS constellation, currently GPS, that is checking whether the GPS is telling the truth. So it provides the integrity. And this is an enabler for safety critical applications like in aviation, like in the future, hopefully in rail, to be able to take advantage of GNSS and in fact rely on GNSS for what concerns such level of applications that require really the safety element to be taken into account. Then another component that I would like to mention from the space program, despite it's a little bit out of the box for ERTMS, but is still highly relevant for rail and becoming used, is Copernicus, which is the Europe's eyes on Earth. And as Matthias was mentioning yesterday, we are being watched. That's the news. But in case of Copernicus, we are indeed being watched just with the space program providing the eyes. However, it's you as the users who are the brain for the applications and that have to actually know what do they want to watch. So in railways, for example, Copernicus is used for vegetation encroachment monitoring. It can be used for measurement of the soil moisture under the railway track. Indeed, it really sees even underground. And actually there is a Copernicus land monitoring, land movement service, and it is able and capable to monitor the movements around the railway tracks and be able to trigger some alarms in case that there is a land subsidence, for example. So all of these elements are there from the space program, including also the last pillar, which is the EU SATCOM that is currently under definition and framing within our mother DG, which is the Directorate General for Defense, Industry and Space. So this is for the introduction and for the view on EUSPA. And now, very briefly, to the topic of ERTMS that needs to be addressed. So in Madrid, I mentioned that our projects that we fund as the European Union Space Program for actually enlarging or enabling the market adoption of GNSS and ERTMS, they should be seen in the context of the innovation and the system pillar. So our projects contribute to the innovation pillar with the basics of the solution and sort of market readiness type of activities that are then taken as a part of the EU Rail program and brought towards the further chain in order to ensure that at some point they have a chance to be integrated into the TSIs. And I mentioned maybe a couple of projects like CLAG, which is coordinated by SNCF, that is nowadays in the process of delivering the localization onboard unit. Then we have a project called RailGap that is out there to deliver on the digital maps topic. But I would like to actually come to one particular project which is very important and with which everything really turns much simpler, as Christian said yesterday, and this is EGNOS for Rail. EGNOS for Rail is a project between EUSPA, Europe's Rail, European Railway Agency, ESA, and mainly the R2DATO, which is really user-driven and also user-coordinated, that aims to actually allow three different things. Have a common roadmap for GNSS introduction in rail, and have a demonstrator of EGNOS service ready for FA2 demonstrators next year. So we are on track to deliver within this project a real demonstrator that can be then tested in frame of Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking second phase. And with this, I think that we are on track fully to support further the case of GNSS and ERTMS. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. You providing me a hook, and I'm gonna take it, and it's your turn, Adrien. But just to echo the question earlier from the gentleman from CER, and that will be the introduction to Adrien's question. Like I've mentioned, we have the innovation pillar where we are working and developing on quite a number of functions. I mean, we are working on the ATO grade of automation 3.4, remote train operation, still doing work on moving block, train integrity, and so on. Fail-safe train or advanced safe train positioning is one of them. I'm not gonna lie, everyone knows in the room this is an extremely complex technical topic. It's also a very hot topic that has stirred quite a lot of discussion over the past few years or even decades. Everyone is aware of that. EU-Rail is taking over the torch in getting the technical work forward together with obviously with the EUSPA and other partners like ESA, and we'll come back to that. But the whole point, to come back to the question of the gentleman, is that we're working on specification, but that's not the end of it. We're also developing prototypes, we're testing and seeing what works on what doesn't work. Adrien, you're here not on, in your capacity as SNCF, but as a representative of one of the leading experts in the EU-Rail innovation pillar on train positioning. Question is very simple. Where are we now? I mean, the work has started over a year and a half ago. It's just the beginning of the program, but what can we expect in the coming 2-3 years, at the very least, at the end of this first wave of projects?
Yeah, as you said, FP2 is ongoing now, and actually the ambition of FP2 is really to take into account the past project and to define, as you said, a set of specification and of requirement defining the advanced safe train positioning, and also, as you say, to demonstrate the achievability of this requirement, because it's a nice thing to have a set of specification, especially for a new topic, but we need to prove that it's achievable. And at the end, we need to provide the recommendation from the demonstrator or the result from the demonstrator we had to the system pillar, so they can provide a new CCS onboard definition. So in FP2, we have two work packages dealing with advanced safe train positioning. The first one is work package 21, and the goal of work package 21 is really to focus on the user's needs and on the system specification and requirement. And we need to take into account the present day users of localization, which is obviously ATP, but we also need to take into account the future users like perception or ATO. So the work package 21 delivered a set of documentation, a mature set of documentation at the end of 2023. And we are planning to make a major update of this set of documentation at the end of 2024 to take into account actually the new information or the update information we may have, especially from other work package ongoing on R2DATO. We also have work package 22, which is dealing with the prototype and the demonstration. So here the work is ongoing with the definition of 8 demonstrators that are going to be tested in 2025. And we hope to have the final result at the end of 2025 or beginning of 2026. And the objective is to demonstrate the feasibility of the requirement we define in Work Package 21, and also to define a common architecture coming out from the results of the A demonstrator. There are also some safety analyses which are done to identify if the safety requirements are achievable or not.
Thanks a lot. Can we consider that we make a promise to the audience that we come back in 2 years with the initial results from those demonstrators? Because there seems to be appetite to know more and also to see that we don't just do paperwork in an office somewhere, but that we're actually demonstrating demonstrating that it works.
I agree, it's quite an interesting question, and I think it's also related to the architecture questions we may have. And on this part, actually, there are, I think, 2 levels of architecture to be taken into account, and that really will have a major impact on the result we will have in 26. The first one is the high-level architecture, which is a CCS on-board architecture. And today, there is no overall future CCS architecture which is defined or agreed, and the work is ongoing in the system pillar. And actually, the definition of this architecture will have an impact. The integration of the ASTP into the overall CCS on board is not yet we don't have the interfaces and the needs identified right now. So for example, if we can have some function allocation between the ASTP or the ETCS, who is going to derive the sensor position to the train front end, it can be done in the ASTP or in the ETCS. This decision shall be taken by the system pillar and may have a major impact on the ASTP specification. So we need to be careful about that. And depending on what we are awaiting from the ASTP is going to be used to stop in front of a platform string door. It's not the same requirement that if we are only using it to stop without platform string door. So the second part is also the common architecture which is ongoing in Work Package 22, and it is the internal architecture of the ASTP, or at least the definition of a common exported constraint, because we have 8 demonstrators today, and of course we cannot let each demonstrator request external constraint or external inputs which differ from each other. And this is really taken into account in the common architecture definition in Work Package 22. And I'm quite optimistic that even if it's not always really easy to find a consensus and we may have some technical debate, we still have 2 years, and especially with the result of the demonstrator, I think we can make some arbitrage at the end. I think in 2 years we will have a clear set of recommendations to the system pillar, so we can finalize a future CCS on-board architecture, taking into account what ASTP is able to provide.
It's good. It's that both Daniel and Adrien are both positive and optimistic, so it's a good basis for the future work. Just staying with you, Adrien, there's only a few minutes left for the panel, so Daniel mentioned EGNOS for Rail, so this joint project that was launched with EU Rail. We have the involvement of EUSPA, the European Space Agency, the agency as well, when it comes to the uptake of those results into the railway regulation. Can you just very quickly just let us know, because I know that the project in which you are involved in the innovation pillar has provided input in the last few months, and I think it would be quite interesting to have a bit of an overview very quickly, if you can.
Quickly. So yeah, EGNOS for Rail is really an important activity that are going in parallel with FP2. Actually, it's quite simple because we have 8 demonstrators, and 6 of them are using EGNOS for Rail and GNSS as a core sensor to achieve the performances and the safety requirements. We started the activities with the space sector, ESA and EUSPA, and the first step was to provide the ASTP requirement, and especially the performance requirement awaited. So it was more a link between Work Package 21 and ESA EUSPA. And the second step, which is ongoing now, is to provide to the space agencies the way or information on how we are going to use EGNOS in the demonstrator. For example, we can acquire the EGNOS signals from space or from a telecom network, so via FRMCS. And so each demonstrator is now providing information about how they intend to use EGNOS as to acquire the signal or even to prove the safety requirement or to prove the safety demonstration. So this is ongoing now. The interesting facts that it's really interesting to discuss between the space sector and the rail sector because we don't have the same definitions, the same understanding about availability, safety, and how we use the safety aspects. We don't have the same field event. So it's really important to have this link and to work together to achieve and to have a service, an EGNOS service, which will let us introduce the GNSS and the future TSI.
And which will be tested before
which
any
will be tested by
further steps.
Administrators.
Thanks a lot. Daniel, I have one final question for you, and it might echo with another important topic that has been addressed quite extensively this week, FRMCS. You've mentioned it in your introduction. If I'm not wrong, it's called IRIS Square, the low Earth orbital constellation that should be providing enhanced satellite communication capabilities. How do you see that it's going to potentially, if not, if any, influence the FRMCS spec or the evolution of the FRMCS specification?
You have a talent, Lea, always to come with very difficult questions, huh?
Especially the last one to conclude the panel, to keep people
okay.
alive.
Well, in this case, we have to understand that it's a system that is under evolution at the moment in the frame of the EU SATCOM program, governmental satellite communication first, and then eventually evolution towards the IRIS Square, currently under definition at DG DEFIS. Preparatory activities are going on, but we did our homework already at EUSPA, taking a look at the rail-related part, and we clearly understand also from the conclusions that were actually shared at this conference that there is a problem in rail, which is the obsolescence for the future. And also there is a problem, of course, as anticipated by Josef yesterday, with the total cost of ownership. So these telecommunication systems, distributed, terrestrial, are costly from the perspective of maintenance and the cost for the deployment. So over there, I believe that there is a high potential for EU SATCOM in the future to contribute eventually to bring the cost down and offer alternative solution. And I know that some of the railway undertakings are already experimenting with alternative SATCOM solutions nowadays to see where it could be actually deployed. And the candidate, of course, is for sure the wider network of the low-density lines, capillary lines, etc., that might have a bit less of the requirements burden. But to conclude, from my perspective, it is important that from the railway side, you keep the doors opened in terms of the specification for the multi-bearer telecommunication solutions for future railways, for FRMCS. And also, I would recommend to take advantage also of something that you might not be aware actually from time to time, but you have a very big power as railways to influence heavily what the other programs, even including the space program, are going to be doing. You can set the user requirements and tell us what would you like to see in the future evolution of the space program. So please take advantage of it and use it as much as you can. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. Unless someone from the agency is jumping on stage and stopping me now, I think I have 2 minutes left, so maybe the opportunity to take a couple of questions from the floor. I've noticed an interesting one on Slido, but I don't know if someone in the room wants to have the courage to take a mic and ask a question to one of our 4 panelists. Otherwise, I will take this one from Slido. Can't see anything, but I don't think there is anything moving. Yeah, I will start with this one. It's actually a nice transition from satellite communication, FRMCS, and back to cybersecurity. I will take the question in order not to say something ridiculous. But yes, we got the question on slide on FRMCS and cybersecurity, whether it shouldn't focus on end-to-end security rather than having FRMCS security. Thomas or Marcus? I guess Thomas is going first.
I will give it a try, but I will speak under the control of Marcus. He is much more experimented than me. There is a basic concept in cybersecurity, which is called cybersecurity in depth, meaning that whenever you can implement security measures, maybe that's a good idea to do it. So the way I see it, at least, is that FRMCS should have native enablers for cybersecurity, including also for the application like the voice application that should be secured as well. And then, of course, on top of it, the other applications that are users of the FRMCS system could have additional levels of protections, but relying only on the end-to-end protection might be problematic. But Marcus, maybe you want to complement.
40 seconds, and then we need to close.
Very, very quick, but I think you got it right, Thomas. From the security, we have the end-to-end principle, so we don't relying to any transport protocol or transport technology. So FRMCS is only one possibility. So we can use the concept for security also for fixed line over Ethernet and other media. Security is also not only on the communication link, it's also requirements for the component itself. So FRMS security is needed for attacking on the radio channel, and the security that we define here in the system pillar is the end-to-end security that defines requirements from the component and the end-to-end security layer. So both are needed.
Very clear. Thank you very much. I hope the person who asked the question is happy about the answer. That's all we have for today. It was a very short deep dive into some key developments and key activities ongoing right now at ERL level. There are so many more, as I have mentioned at the very beginning. Hopefully we can come back in 2 years with more results coming from the innovation pillar side and also the system pillar from the joint undertaking work and present them and also get first ideas and first comments on the state of development. Daniel, Adrien, Marcus, Thomas, thank you very much for being here. Round of applause for them. And thank you very much.